200, and then 300, and then 250, and then 275, and so on. How would you figure this out though? Remember, the deal is that we are going to always meet in the middle. So in order to figure this out, I will have to look at my previous price, which is 275, and then I have to add it with the previous, which is 250, and then to find the middle, I will have to divide it by 2, which is just the average of the previous two terms. And of course, you can work this out, but notice this term can be based on the two previous terms, right? So we can come up with a recursive formula to solve this. So this is the recursive way. And to write recursive formula, what you are going to do is you are going to define the first term in your sequence, which is the 400 here, and then the next term, which is A2, and that's the 200 here. So that's pretty much the first two conditions, and then you have to extend the deal. The deal is that we are always going to meet in the middle. So an is equal to the previous term, which is an minus 1, and then the previous, which is an minus 2. And then we are going to add them up. And then to find the middle, we divide it by 2, which is just like that. So this is how we define the recursive formula. And this works for n is greater than or equal to 3. So this is nice, but what exactly can we do with this though? Remember, our goal is to figure out price so that both the seller and then the buyer we can eventually agree on. And the idea is that if you look at this sequence and imagine this keeps on going forever, we are looking for the price so that this is converging too. And that's the idea of taking a limit in calculus. And of course, you can solve this without a computer, but I will show you guys how to solve it on computer. So as you can see, I just need to enter $400 on the first cell and then $200 on the second cell. And then on the third cell, I have to enter the formula. And then I will just have to drag it. And then you can just see that after about 10-20 times, this right here is about 266.666 forever. And in fact, that will be the limit. And since we're talking about money, so I will just say 67. And because I'm rounding, so I will just put the approximation right here. So this right here will be the price that we shall make a deal on. Right, so this is really cool, isn't it? And now, before I show you guys the next approach, let me ask you guys another situation. Earlier, remember, the seller calls out the price first, $400, and then I negotiated with $200, right? What if I call the price first instead? So suppose I want a pair of shoes so badly, so I approach him and say, can you please sell me those shoes for $200? Of course, he will say no, and he will try to sell me those shoes for $400. And then from here, we will still do the same. We'll negotiate and we'll try to meet in the middle. So B3 from here is still going to be the average of these two. So it's still going to be 300. But in this situation, if I call the price first, do you think that eventually the price right here is going to be the same as this one here? If you would like, you can pause the video and think about it. Okay, now I will tell you. If we call the price first, we will end up paying $333.33, approximately speaking. Yeah, because I rounded, so that's why I put down approximation right here. Yep, as you can see, if you let the seller open his mouth first, then you can pay less. And if you open your mouth first, you actually have to pay more. So this is like if you ever fight with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, you know, whoever opens the mouth first loses. That's the idea. Okay, now I'll show you guys the second way to do this, and that's pay attention to from 400 to 200. If you look at this as divided by 2, well, from here to here, it's not divided by 2. So in fact, I will actually look at from 400 to 200 as minus 200, and then from 200 to 300, I will say that's plus 100, and then from here to here, that's minus 50, and then from here to here, that's plus 25. Even though these numbers are not the same, but we do have a pattern for these numbers. From here to here is just multiplied by negative 1/2, isn't it? So to figure out what we have to do next, I will just have to cut this into half, but that's a negative now. So I will have to subtract half of that, which is 1250, and that's how we can figure out what that number is. So you can work that out, but let's see. This right here, it's actually a geometric sequence, and I'll actually use a geometric series to figure out what the limit should be. Let's take a look at 275. How did we end up with 275? Well, you can look at that as starting at 400, and then minus 200, and then plus 100, and then minus 50, and then plus 25. And that's it for 275, right? That's it. If you want to go to the next one, then you minus 12.5. But in order for us to figure out the limit, we can actually just do the same thing. And then you have to keep on going forever. Well, as I said, this right here is actually a geometric series because we have a common ratio. R is negative 1/2. And because the absolute value of negative 1/2 is 1/2, which is less than 1, so we know this right here does converge. We do have a limit. And to figure this out, all we need is the first term, put it on the numerator, divided by 1 minus the common ratio, which is negative 1/2. And that's it. And once again, you can work this out. And altogether, you get 800 over 3.